I know who killed Famous.
Who?
Mother.
You said you might know who put down Fame.
Raq.
Who tortured and killed Sean Famous Figueroa? That's been one of the main questions that we've been dissecting over the past few weeks post episode 305. It's actually turned into a mini-series in itself after it was finally confirmed Famous is gone. Over the past few weeks, we've gone through a lot of evidence, facts and findings in terms of who the main suspects were and why. We looked at a number of things such as teaser clips, storylines, motive and timeline. We've ruled a number of characters out, which again, we will remind ourselves of in this breakdown. But each week we seem to be getting more and more pieces to this crazy jigsaw that nobody seems to be able to piece together. Let's be real, nobody knows a damn thing. And that's one of the best things about season 4. When we do eventually get the answers, we're either going to think, oh shit, or it's going to end up being a huge disappointment. Hopefully it's the first reaction, because I genuinely do think they are building up to a huge reveal, and something big will change the dynamics for the Thomases and the chessboard heading into a season 5. So, as with previous investigations that we've done over the past 2 weeks, we're going to take the same approach. We're going to dive even deeper into the question with new information that was revealed in 407. We're going to look at the characters that we can rule out, because there is one more we can definitely cross off the list. We're going to look at the information and story so far, along with a bit of information in regards to this particular scene and some other bits from social media, which will give us a different perspective. We're also going to take a look at 2 scenarios, the case for Raq being involved and the case where Raq may not be involved, where this could potentially be a red herring. As usual, once I've presented the story of events, the evidence, facts and findings, and also the new clues you guys may not have seen across social media, you guys can tell me where you stand, and then right at the end, I'll let you know what my thoughts are. So, without further ado, let's get into it, starting with the characters we can definitely rule out of the running. Now, based on the last few weeks, we can definitely rule out Kanan for obvious reasons, and also Jukebox. From a timeline perspective, we also know it can't be Detective Howard, Ronnie, or Lou. Marvin was high up on the list after the first week, but that was based on this scene here, which has actually been debunked, and apparently this isn't even Famous. But even then, once we found out that Famous was tortured, we all thought there is no way Marvin would ever torture Fame anyway. So, after episode 406, we ruled out Marvin, and so did London Brown, who actually plays Marvin.
Does Marvin have to take it Famous out? That don't even make sense to the storyline.
Now, we did actually keep Raq on the list because we did mention, we're still not sure based on what she's done before. The history speaks for itself, and as we saw in episode 407, they are certainly pointing the finger at Raq and law enforcement, or at least Kanan is. So, Raquel and law enforcement, they're still definitely on the list. But after episode 7, we can now rule out Unique. Last week we said we are going to keep him on the watch list until they either throw more suspicion on his name or completely rule him out. Well, after episode 407, it did seem like they were emphasizing the fact if it was Unique, he would have been singing loud and proud. So that brings us up to speed in terms of characters that are ruled out of the running, which includes Kanan, Jukebox, Detective Howard, Ronnie, Lou, Marvin, and now also Unique. With that being said, let's talk about the information we do know so far in terms of Famous's death. Now, we know Famous was picked up in 310, where he was questioned around the murder of Freddie Williams. He was pressured by Garcia, Detective Tanner, and Captain Baptiste. That was after they found the murder weapon linking him to Freddie's death. We know they weren't after Famous because he was small fish compared to the likes of the Thomases and the Italians. That's who law enforcement really wanted. Heading into season 4 in 402, we learned that Famous had disappeared, vanished, poof. He hadn't been seen for 2 months. A further month then passed by the time we got to 405. Miss Figueroa, in conversation with Detective Garcia, said that it's been 3 months since Famous had been missing and law enforcement weren't doing a damn thing. Now, what we learned about Famous in terms of what they've told us so far, Garcia mentioned that he'd been assisting law enforcement in the death of a detective before he vanished. We can only assume that the law enforcement officer they were talking about was Detective Howard. He also mentioned in the same conversation, Famous was tortured before he was murdered. In 406, when Duke and Kanan took it to the streets and questioned Freddie Williams' crew, they said they weren't exactly mourning Freddie's death because he used to tax them just like he did with everyone else. But they did also mention they heard it was police that dropped Fame. People around the way were saying Fame knew about some cops being dirty and they got scared of him talking, so they snatched him up and put him down. Lumi, who Duke had the gun to, did say it was some guys talking at the barber shop. Now fast forward to the latest events in 407. During this conversation between Kanan and Duke, Jukebox mentioned if it was law enforcement, then their hit still would have been called from the streets. And well, what did Kanan see here? Raq giving an envelope to some officers. However, this is where I do think we have to talk about the topic of red herrings and how they might potentially be playing a game with us. Now, last week I made the case of how the writers do seem to be messing with the audience of raising Kanan, with this particular scene that they put in a particular teaser. I even said before season 4, watch out with what raising Kanan can trick us with, because of what they did with Joey Badass back in season 3. In my part 2 of Who Killed Fame, I started to genuinely question, are they playing a bigger game with us? Because it did seem like they were making us look in a different direction, giving us a few pieces of the puzzle, episode by episode, but not giving us the full picture. Basically, if it was a meal, we're definitely still on the starters. We haven't even got to the main course yet. I mean, forget about the dessert. They're still toying with us and making us look in different directions, drip feeding us information, and like I said before, it is our job to kind of decipher the truth from the lies, just like Kanan and Duke. But I still don't think we're peeping it the way we need to because we don't have the full picture. Now, this is where I do want to bring it to this scene with Raq giving the 2 police officers an envelope of cash. And here's where we're going to run through 2 different perspectives. 1. The case for Raq being involved in Famous's death. And number 2. How he might be a red herring and why Raq may not be involved. Now, a lot of us have been talking about Raq being involved in Famous's murder since the moment it was confirmed. Based on history and what we know of Raq, what she's had Lou do before back in season 1, how she had him get rid of D-Wiz to go in to see his mom in 103. That's exactly what came to mind when I saw her comforting Miss Figueroa. All the lies, manipulation, killing Scrappy for thinking he was a snitch, having Kanan shoot his father to then killing him in 310. That's just scratching the surface when it comes to the things that Raq has done. We look at what's been said over the last few seasons and just his past episode in 407. Everybody thinks she had something to do with Hypo's death and also DEFCON. So, could we really rule out Raq in terms of what we know she's capable of, what she's done before? Definitely not. If there was ever a scenario where Famous was telling on some dirty cops, for example Detective Howard, again, he did look into Kanan's bag and found the initials of MH on the DNA test. A lot of people said he talked too much, including Ronnie Mathis. The lyrics of his song, which became a big hit, were basically him snitching on himself in regards to the murder of Freddie Williams. If Raq ever thought that Famous was a threat to Kanan or the Thomases because he was talking, or where someone could connect the dots in terms of Raq helping Howard when she was a minor, just like Detective Burke did, would Raq get rid of Famous? No doubt, no question. Reputation means a lot in the streets. We only have to look at this past episode in terms of what people think about Raq. So, based on history, what she's done before with D-Wiz and everything else, if she thought that Famous was a threat, I do think she would get rid of him. We've also spoken about how she could have got the intel from Andre Barnes, because he was someone with a lot of connections inside law enforcement. If he ever learned there was a kid named Sean Figueroa, street name Famous, talking to law enforcement, that information could have easily been passed on to Raq, where she then makes the call. Based on history, what she's done before, based on what we know of what she's capable of, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to actually think Raq may have actually had something to do with it. Kanan certainly thinks so based on this, her passing law enforcement an envelope in broad daylight. Of course, we're going to come to the other perspective in just a moment. Now, from a storyline perspective, the case for Raq being involved in Famous's death also makes sense because it could also act as the final straw between maybe not just her and Kanan, but also Lou, Jukebox and Marvin. For a lot of season 4, you can see them really closing the walls in on Raq. She loses her lawyer, which means she loses her eyes and ears within law enforcement. They're slowly breaking her empire brick by brick, which is mainly unique. There's Joyce's death. Stefano also wants her moved on. Famous was a character who was really loved by a lot of the Thomases. Imagine a scenario where they all learned that Raq was involved. In 406, Lou said he wanted revenge because he had a really close bond with Famous, and we all saw what Famous's death almost did to Lou. It almost pushed him into drinking again. If he were to learn that it was Raq, what do you think that would do to Raq's relationship with Lou? In terms of Jukebox, we know how close Jukebox and Raq's relationship is, and how it's different to the rest of the Thomases. They share a lot of secrets that they don't do with the rest. How would that change the dynamic between Raq and Juke if Raq really did call the hit? We are going to see Jukebox's reaction in 408. With Marvin, I think he'd probably look at Raq and think, really? You really had Famous tortured and killed? I think he'd be really disappointed in his sister. With Kanan, what more needs to be said? It really would be the final straw. So, if she was involved, if Kanan's thinking, and this does prove to be true, from a storyline perspective, you can see how it would completely tear the family apart, where relationships will never be the same ever again. Which does kind of make sense if you kind of think about who Kanan eventually becomes, how he named his son Sean after his best friend, how he could fully break away and start working with Breeze. That's when he is eventually introduced. And also if season 5 is a final season, it does kind of make sense. So the case for Raq, based on history, based on her reputation, what she's done before, what she's capable of, and how it could completely change the dynamics of the Thomases going forward. From a storyline perspective, could it be that Raq was involved? With that being said, let's take a look at the case where it may not be Raq. Now, number 1. Why would Raq even have Famous tortured? If she thought he was a snitch, why not just get rid of him like she got rid of Scrappy? Bang, get rid of the problem and make sure you deal with the body afterwards. You'd also only torture someone if you thought they were potentially talking, but where you are actually trying to get information from them. Otherwise, why torture someone? As ruthless and as cold as Raq is, and what we've seen from her before, I'm not 100% sure if I'm on board with her going to that extent of having him tortured and then dumped where his body would eventually be found. Number 2. Patina Miller did mention in an interview where she just gets blamed for everything. Whenever there's a problem, whenever something goes wrong, they always look to blame Raq. She's always the problem, never the solution. It was the same in 407. However, I do think it's because of Raq's reputation. It definitely precedes her. In my breakdown for 407, we spoke about the boy who cried wolf, and how Raq's reputation may finally be catching up with her. She's done so much bad shit in the past before. Lied, killed, manipulated. It's no surprise that nobody believes her anymore, when in fact, she could actually genuinely be innocent, at least when it comes to Famous. And I do think that's what could potentially be happening in this scenario. Because of what Kanan's been through before, because of what he knows his mom's is capable of, and her reputation, he's immediately thinking, yeah, Raq definitely called a hit. But this could literally mean anything. These are the same officers who were causing Raq trouble back in season 3, who were basically looking for a bit of a payoff. Drug dealers have law enforcement in their back pockets all the time. I mean, is this scene here really enough for Kanan to be 100% sure that it was his mum Raq? I mean, I don't think so. And even if Raq did make a deal with someone to get rid of Fame, she's handing an envelope to law enforcement officers out in the open in broad daylight. So, I don't think this is enough for Kanan to immediately say, it's Raq. Is this a case where Raq's reputation is finally catching up? And even if she weren't involved, Kanan is probably thinking she is, because of what she's done before. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if that's what he's kind of thinking. The fact that this is here, and they're showing Raq with these 2 police officers with this envelope, I personally do think it could potentially be a red herring. In my opinion, it's just not enough to say that Raq was involved. But it is enough to go do some more digging and investigation, and definitely keeping her as one of the suspects. So, with that being said, let's move on to my thoughts and opinions. Now, after watching episode 407, where do I stand? Last week we ran through the option of whether it could have been Raq as well as law enforcement, and it definitely does look that way, at least for Kanan. But, in my opinion, I do think this could potentially be a red herring and a curveball, not just for us, but also for Kanan. The fact that they put this in here, I'm not too sure if Raq is actually involved. It genuinely may be a case where Raq's reputation just goes against her, and where everybody blames her for the one thing she didn't do. In my opinion, I think law enforcement may potentially have been involved in some shape or form, because it does seem like they're pointing the finger in their direction through a lot of different angles. But even then, just like Duke mentioned, that hit still would have been called from the streets, so who called that hit? It's definitely not Marvin, it's not any of those guys who we ruled out in chapter 2, and I don't personally think it could have been Raq, so who the hell is it? Like the older Kanan said back in 401, we didn't peep it the way we needed to because we weren't looking, and there are certain events that happened from 310 to around episode 402 that we haven't seen. In those specific 2 months, what happened? Could it be a character that we haven't even seen or been introduced to? In my opinion, I'm genuinely starting to think it may be someone who we actually haven't seen. But I also do think eventually we will see the events unfold, or get the answers at least by the end of episode 10.
I can't tell you why. I got shot. I'll tell you that much. My character got shot. My character got shot and was killed by being shot. I can't tell you why, but I had to ask the question. I had to pick my worst relations now.
So that's Antonio Ortiz speaking on what actually happened to Famous. Apparently he was shot, but I don't think we're going to get a full picture or answers in episode 8 or 9. I do think they are going to be drip feeding us the information, and then hit us in episode 10 with something completely unexpected. And as I said at the beginning, we're either going to think, oh shit, or it's just going to be a huge disappointment. Let's see, I'm hoping for the first. Now elsewhere, while we're on my thoughts, last week I went through how they could have potentially left this in this teaser on purpose, where they could potentially be playing a game with us. I mentioned I was genuinely starting to think they're trying to trick us, and the person that supposedly plays this character did drop a few videos on social media where he did confirm that this isn't famous. So take that with a pinch of salt. I do think it was worth mentioning because it did seem like he was telling the truth, but who knows. Like I mentioned before, how I really do love playing games, but I wouldn't be surprised because the Raising Kanan team are very smart when it comes to tricking the audience. So let's wait and see. But that's where we are after episode 7 in terms of the investigation on who tortured and killed Sean Famous Figueroa. There's a lot of new clues and info that we've definitely laid out, which does give us a few new perspectives compared to post episode 406. I still think they've left this scene here in this teaser on purpose to definitely play with us. I also think this could very well much be a red herring, but we're definitely still missing a perspective and an angle to this situation that we haven't seen before or even covered. They're definitely still toying with us. They're still going to drip feed this information over the next episode or two, because Kanan will definitely be on the hunt for answers to his theory, and eventually by the end of season 4, we definitely will get a big reveal. But just like Kanan said, we definitely haven't peeped it because we weren't looking, and it is because we don't have the full picture yet. I do think we will get it in a flashback, but just not yet. So that's where my thoughts are. I've laid out some new information, clues, perspectives, and evidence in this breakdown, and now it's your turn. Let me know where you stand with your thoughts and predictions. Drop them down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.